Hi, I'm Alina, and this is the story of how my family's greed almost destroyed a legacy built on love, flour, and my grandmother's secret recipes. I learned that when you build something beautiful, there will always be vultures who want to claim it as their own, even if they share your blood. For 5 years, I was the heart and soul of Nonna's Table, a restaurant I transformed from a greasy, forgotten diner into a culinary destination celebrated throughout the state. But for my family, my success wasn't a source of pride, it was an asset to be seized. It all started with my uncle's failing diner, the Corner Spot. It was a relic of a bygone era, with cracked vinyl booths, a permanent smell of stale coffee, and a menu that hadn't changed since the 1980s. My uncle, Paul, had inherited it from his father, but he had no passion for it. The place was hemorrhaging money, and he was a week away from selling it for scrap to a developer who wanted to turn it into a parking lot. I remember him sighing over dinner one night, "It's a lost cause, Alina. People want new, they want fancy. They don't want this old dump." That's when I saw my chance. I had just finished culinary school, but my real education came from my Nonna's kitchen. She had been a phenomenal cook, a magician who could turn simple ingredients into feasts. When she passed, she left me her most prized possession, a thick, leather-bound book filled with her handwritten recipes, stained with olive oil and dusted with flour. It was a lifetime of secrets, techniques, and love poured onto every page. My cousin, Leo, Uncle Paul's son, had always scoffed at it. He was off at a prestigious hospitality management school in Switzerland, learning about profit margins and brand synergy. "You can't build a business on peasant food, Alina," he'd say during his brief visits home, but I knew better. I saw potential where he saw peasants. I made my uncle a deal. "Let me take over for 6 months, I pleaded. "Don't pay me. I'll use my own savings. If I can't turn it around, you can sell it, and I'll walk away." Seeing no other option, he reluctantly agreed. The first thing I did was close for 2 weeks. I scrubbed the place from floor to ceiling, tore out the grimy booths, and painted the walls a warm, inviting cream. I brought in rustic wooden tables and hung old black and white photos of my grandmother in her garden. I renamed it Nonna's Table. Then, I opened the book. I spent every waking hour in that kitchen, not just following the recipes but understanding them. I learned the precise moment to take the bread from the oven so the crust would sing when tapped, the exact ratio of herbs for the sugo that had been in our family for generations. I forged relationships with local farmers, sourcing the freshest vegetables, eggs, and dairy. My food wasn't just cooked, it was crafted. When we reopened, things were slow at first. But then a local food blogger came in. She wrote a review that went viral, calling my pasta a religious experience and the restaurant a hidden gem that feels like coming home. After that, we exploded. We had lines out the door every night. I worked 18-hour days, my hands perpetually calloused and burned, but I had never been happier. I was building something real, something with soul. Uncle Paul was overjoyed, not because of the legacy, but because of the money flowing in. "You did it, kid," he'd say, clapping me on the back. For 2 years, I ran everything. I hired and trained a kitchen staff who became like family. I managed the books, the inventory, the marketing, everything. We were a success story, my success story. Then Leo came home. He graduated with honors and a head full of corporate ambition. He saw the packed restaurant, the glowing reviews, the healthy bank account, and his eyes lit up with a different kind of hunger. "This is incredible, cousin," he said, feigning admiration. "You've built a solid foundation. Now, it's time to scale." He presented a plan to his father, my uncle. A plan filled with buzzwords like brand expansion, franchise model, and optimized supply chain. He argued that I was a great cook, but I was too emotionally invested and lacked the strategic vision to turn Nonna's Table into a true empire. My uncle, blinded by his son's shiny degree and smooth corporate speak, agreed. Suddenly, the Nonna's Table restaurant group was formed. Leo was appointed CEO. I was given the title Executive Chef and Head of Culinary Innovation. It was a fancy way of saying, stay in the kitchen and look pretty. I fought against it, but my uncle was firm. "Alina, this is for the best. You're a chef, not a businesswoman. Leo will take us to the next level." I was heartbroken, but I loved that restaurant. So, I swallowed my pride and tried to make it work. The next 3 years were a slow, painful erosion of everything I had built. While I worked to maintain the quality and integrity of the food, Leo was in the spotlight. He was on the cover of magazines, accepting Restaurateur of the Year awards, and giving interviews about the brand philosophy I had created. He took credit for my recipes, my relationships with farmers, and the very soul of the restaurant. Behind the scenes, he began making changes. He switched our high-quality olive oil for a cheaper blend to improve margins. He wanted to replace our fresh, hand-rolled pasta with a pre-made, frozen version to increase efficiency. Each change was a small cut, a tiny betrayal of my grandmother's legacy. We argued constantly. "You're thinking like a small-town cook, Alina," he would shout. "I'm thinking like a global brand." Then came his grand vision, a flagship restaurant in the city's most expensive district. It was a massive, multi-million-dollar project. The design was cold and minimalist, all chrome and glass, the opposite of the warm, rustic feel of the original. But Leo and my uncle were obsessed with it. This was their monument. The grand opening was a lavish affair. Leo had invited every food critic, investor, and socialite in the city. I was told to just oversee the kitchen and make sure the canapés were perfect. As the night wore on, my uncle and Leo took the stage to give a speech. I stood at the back of the room, expecting a thank you, some small acknowledgement of the woman whose recipes were the entire reason they were all there. Instead, Leo tapped the microphone and smiled a shark smile. "As we launch this new chapter for Nonna's table," he began, his voice echoing through the silent, opulent room, "we are also embracing a new, more refined culinary direction. We are moving beyond our rustic origins to a more elevated, globally inspired cuisine." My blood ran cold. I knew what was coming. "The heart of any great restaurant is its chef," he continued. "And to lead us into the future, I am thrilled to announce we have brought on Chef Antoine Dubois, directly from a 2-Michelin star restaurant in Paris." A man in a crisp white jacket stepped onto the stage to applause. I just stared, my heart pounding in my ears. Leo then looked out into the crowd, his eyes scanning until they landed on me. "I want to thank my cousin, Alina, for her contributions in the early days. Her quaint, traditional cooking helped us build a foundation. But as we evolve, we must make difficult decisions." He let the words hang in the air before delivering the final, public blow. "Alina's style, her grandmother's peasant food, simply doesn't fit the sophisticated brand we are building. It's time for a change in leadership. In the kitchen. It is time for her to step aside." The room was filled with gasps and whispers. I looked at my uncle, who stood beside his son, nodding in agreement, a proud look on his face. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. Humiliation washed over me in a hot, sickening wave. They hadn't just fired me, they had publicly declared my life's work, my grandmother's legacy, as worthless peasant food. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. I turned, and with every eye in the room on me, I walked to the kitchen service door, pushed it open, and left without a word. As the door swung shut behind me, cutting off the murmurs of the crowd, I walked down the sterile back corridor. Leo and my uncle thought they had won. They thought they had the brand, the restaurant, the future. But in their arrogance, they had forgotten one very crucial detail. They had forgotten what was in Nonna's leather-bound book. It wasn't just recipes. It was everything. A small, vengeful smile touched my lips for the first time that night. They thought my food was worthless. They were about to find out exactly what it was worth. That night, I didn't cry. The humiliation had burned away the tears, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I drove not to my apartment, but to my small, rented storage unit. Inside, under a dusty tarp, sat a heavy wooden chest. My grandmother's chest. I unlocked it, the scent of cedar and old paper filling the air. I bypassed the stacks of photo albums and old linens and pulled out 2 things, the thick, leather-bound recipe book, and a simple manila folder labeled NT Incorporation. Leo thought he was a businessman. He was about to learn that while he was studying theory in Switzerland, I was taking night classes in business law at the local community college. He and my uncle had made a critical mistake, born of arrogance and their dismissal of me as just a simple cook. They saw the restaurant's success, but they never bothered to understand the foundation it was built upon. As I sat on the cold concrete floor, flipping through the pages of the folder under the dim light of a single bare bulb, a slow smile spread across my face. They thought they had cut me out. In reality, they had just handed me the knife. The plan that formed in my mind wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming a legacy they had tried to steal and corrupt. I spent the next 2 hours on my laptop, drafting emails and making arrangements. The pieces were all there, I just had to put them in motion. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Maria, the head waitress from the original Nonna's table. Her voice a panicked whisper. "Alina, it's a disaster. Chef Dubois, he's furious. He says the sauce is wrong, the bread is flat, nothing tastes right. He's yelling at the kitchen staff in French. Customers are sending dishes back. Leo keeps telling everyone it's just opening day jitters, but it's more than that. It's like the soul is gone." I listened calmly. "Don't worry, Maria. Tell the others to hang in there. I'll be there soon." I took my time getting ready, choosing a simple but sharp navy blue dress. When I walked into the original Nonna's table, the one I had poured my life into, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Leo and my uncle were huddled in a corner with the furious Chef Du Bois. I saw a plate of my Nonna's signature lasagna on a nearby table, half-eaten. The sauce was a pale, watery orange instead of its usual deep, rich crimson. It looked anemic. Sad. "What are you doing here?" Leo snapped, his face pale with stress. "I told you, you're not welcome." "I know," I said, my voice even and calm. "I'm just here to collect a few personal items. But since I'm here, it looks like you're having some trouble. Is the world renowned Chef Du Bois finding our peasant food a bit too challenging?" Du Bois shot me a venomous look. "The ingredients are subpar. The tomato base has no depth, no complexity. It is impossible to create art with this mud." I smiled. "It's not the ingredients, chef. It's what's missing." I turned to my uncle and Leo. "You see, while you were busy designing logos and scouting expensive real estate, you never asked about the heart of our menu. The sugo. The sauce that is the base for nearly 60% of our best-selling dishes." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "You assumed it was just tomatoes and herbs, something anyone could replicate from a recipe. You were wrong." I pulled my Nonna's book from my tote bag and laid it on the table. "This book has the recipes, yes. But it doesn't have the secret. For 5 generations, the women in our family have maintained a madre, a mother base for the sugo. It's like a sourdough starter, continuously fed and aged, developing layers of complexity that you can't just create overnight. It's what gives the sauce its unique flavor, its soul. And the entire supply of that madre," I patted my bag, "is my personal property. I took it with me when I left last night." The color drained from my uncle's face. Leo just stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. You can't do that," he stammered. "Oh, but I can," I said, pulling the manila folder from my bag and placing it on top of the recipe book. "And there's more. Let's talk about the name of your new restaurant group. Nonna's Table. It's a lovely name. Evokes a feeling of home, tradition, authenticity. It's a shame you won't be able to use it anymore." I slid a document across the table. It was a federal trademark certificate. When I took over the diner 5 years ago, I legally trademarked the name Nonna's Table and the logo design. In my name. Not the company's. Uncle Paul, you might remember signing a consent form. It was in that first batch of incorporation papers you said you were too busy to read through. My uncle sank into a chair, his face ashen. Leo snatched the paper, his eyes scanning it frantically. This is fraud," he hissed. "Is it?" I countered, my voice like ice. "Or is it just smart business? Something you're supposed to be an expert in? You tried to build an empire on my work, on my grandmother's legacy. But you don't own the name. You don't own the core recipes. And..." I gestured to the kitchen doors, where my loyal sous chef and head baker were now standing with their jackets on. "You don't own the loyalty of the people who helped me build this place." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I put it on speaker. It was Mr. Rossi, the organic farmer who supplied our heirloom tomatoes. "Alina, just confirming that per our conversation last night, my supply contract is with you personally, not the restaurant group. As of today, all deliveries are being rerouted to your new location. That cousin of yours was very rude when I informed him." I clicked off the phone. The best suppliers. The most skilled staff. The secret to the food. The name of the restaurant itself. It's all mine, Leo. You and my uncle don't have a restaurant group. You have 2 buildings, a mountain of debt from your new glass palace, and a very confused French chef. You publicly humiliated me and called my grandmother's legacy worthless. Now, let's see what your brand is worth without it." Leo's carefully constructed composure shattered. "You conniving witch. You planned this." "No," I said, my voice ringing with the truth. "I didn't. I spent 5 years trying to honor our family. I planned this in 12 hours, after you and my uncle decided I was disposable. You gave me no choice." I stood up, gathering my things. "So, here are your options. Option 1, you can try to fight me. I'll sue you for trademark infringement, and I will win. I will open my own restaurant, with the real staff, the real recipes, and the real name. The story of what you did will be everywhere. Your new flagship will become a laughingstock and you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. Your reputation in the industry will be ruined forever." My uncle looked up, his eyes pleading. "And option 2, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Option 2, I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You sign over the deed to this original building back to me, for the $1 you originally paid for it. You walk away from this location, free and clear. You can keep your soulless glass box in the city. You can rebrand it, call it Leo's Place or whatever you want. I won't interfere. But the name Nonna's Table, and everything it stands for, belongs to me. You have 24 hours to have your lawyer contact mine. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving the wreckage of their ambition behind me. The next day, their lawyer called. 6 months later, the original Nonna's Table was more successful than ever. The sign on the front door, the one I had designed, shone brightly. The story had become local legend, and the community rallied around me with a fierce loyalty that no marketing campaign could ever buy. The restaurant was filled with the sounds of happy customers and the rich aroma of my Nonna's sugo. My new kitchen team, a mix of the loyal staff who walked out with me and talented new hires, was a true family. The glass flagship restaurant in the city closed its doors in less than a year. Leo and my uncle had tried to rebrand it, but without the name and without the quality, it was just another overpriced, forgettable eatery. The last I heard, Leo had taken a mid-level management job for a hotel chain in another state, his grand ambitions humbled. My uncle sold the failed building at a massive loss and retired, a quiet and broken man. We don't speak. The wound is too deep. The trust, once shattered, can never be perfectly mended. Sometimes, when I'm kneading dough late at night, in the quiet of my kitchen, I feel a pang of sadness for the family I lost. But then I look around at what I have built, or rather, what I reclaimed. A place of warmth, of community, of genuine love for food and heritage. I learned the hardest lesson of my life in the most public way possible, that respect is the most vital ingredient of all. They saw my work as peasant food, a stepping stone to be discarded. They failed to understand that authenticity is a strength, not a weakness. My revenge wasn't in their failure, but in my own flourishing. I didn't just take back a restaurant. I took back my story. And now, I get to decide how the next chapter is written.